What is up, everybody? Thank you for stopping in to talk a trio of Joe Burrow Dynasty trades. And if you want to go ahead and skip to that first one, by all means, please go ahead and do that. But before we do, my name is Chu. You can check me out on Twitter and, of course, here on YouTube at Father Dynasty. Talking about these trades here, I pull all of them off of the Dynasty Daddy database. They have a trade database there. Pulls from different leagues. You can use different filters, pick league size, number of starters, PPR, tight end premium, all that kind of stuff. So it's fantastic. I'm not affiliated or anything like that, but just a very awesome tool to have when you're trying to navigate trades. And certainly when you're in more than one Dynasty league, there's likely different settings. And if they're different enough, like a bigger tight end premium or something like that, or bigger rosters, that sort of thing, it can change the dynamic of a trade. So definitely useful to have that in there, and I definitely recommend anyone who is interested in thinking about a trade or doing a trade or trying to evaluate one, go check it out on there. Just kind of see what is kind of going on in the different leagues there. But talking about Joe Burrow, of course, as we all heard, the news came out today. He is out for the rest of the season, a torn ligament in his wrist, and it will be the Jake Browning show for the rest of the season, which doesn't sound that exciting, but he filled in admirably, I would say, for Joe Burrow, and as far as I understand it, is expecting that he is going to be the guy going forward. I have no doubt they'll snag some a veteran or something to help the QB depth, but at this point, I think it's Jake Browning's show. But talking about Joe Burrow, 15.3 fantasy points per game thus far. That's about on par with Deshaun Watson, and that does include, of course, Watson's game where I think he had maybe 5 passing attempts before he went out with a shoulder injury. So overall for Joe Burrow, it was not necessarily a lost season. He was getting back on track, but he started off very slow. He had a different injury then. I believe it was the calf that he had in the preseason, carried over into the regular season. But slow start. In the first 4 games, he had 2 touchdowns, and I believe those 2 were in the same game. But overall, pretty slow, but he really caught his stride starting around like week 5. He had 4 top 8 finishes in 5 games, and that excludes week 11, of course, the game we're talking about where he was knocked out of due to his wrist injury. If you're looking over at Keep Trade Cut, and I'm sure this will change dramatically even from today to tomorrow, as that seems to be how valuations go on a lot of this stuff. Keep Trade Cut has him as the quarterback 6 in Dynasty. 1 behind Justin Herbert at QB5, and 1 in front of Lamar Jackson at QB7. And in my Dynasty rankings, I have him as the QB6, oddly enough, and you can go check out the rest of those over at goingfor2.com. But without further ado, let me go ahead and jump into the first deal with Joe Burrow. So this one is a 10-team start 9 PPR no tight end premium. This one's fun. So we've got Joe Burrow, a 2024 first, 2025 second, and a 2026 third, little 1, 2, 3, for Aaron Rodgers and Lamar Jackson. And this is very interesting. Pretty much perfect timing, I would say. You have one quarterback who is presumably getting healthy and ready to come back in Aaron Rodgers. Again, he is a 39-year-old quarterback versus Joe Burrow, but he's expected to come back. Even if he does come back this season and they don't really do much of anything, I would believe that he's going to come back next year. I don't see him going out on a lost season or on a partial season. But regardless, even after 2024, do we think he's going to keep playing? He'd be 40, going on 41 after that. So not sure. Lamar Jackson having a strong year. Joe Burrow, as we mentioned, down with the injury. But this is interesting, and this is a pretty interesting way to be able to kind of spread out the picks and going 24 first, 25 second, 26 third. There's a nice little arrangement to that. If I'm being honest, I would take the Burrow side. I really thought that in the first day, maybe 2 after something like this happens, certainly when you're a little more than halfway through the season, this is when the panic sets in. You think, all right, well, it's a lost season for now, and when do we think he's going to come back? I don't think there's a defined timeline as of right now, but again, it is, of course, his throwing hand. there would be concern there, or is throwing risk, excuse me. But when you look at the other side, you've got Aaron Rodgers. If he comes back and is playing like his old self, maybe not back-to-back MVP self, but, again, playing pretty well for Aaron Rodgers, that'll be good for this season, probably for next season. After that, I don't know. And if you're looking at it through that lens, and even if that first is, it's called a mid-first, so you're going to miss out on Caleb Williams and you're going to miss out on Drake May. Let's say that. I'm still comfortable with taking that. I really feel like at that point, if you really do want to be able to, trade up and get that second quarterback in the 2024 class, if you feel good about them, I would have to believe that, you'll have Joe Burrow, who'll be getting healthy and ready for next year. And I would have to think that you could take that 24 first that you're getting, pair that with one of the other two picks and then another player, and see if you can slide up to that third pick or the second pick, depending on where you think you need to be. And at that point, you've got two young quarterbacks, one of which is recovering, but he's already got his deal. He's set, he's secure. He's got great weapons. Again, even if Higgins ends up leaving, which I do think he's going to, you still have Jamar Chase. I'm sure they're going to, at that point, would certainly draft another receiver in the second or third round behind him. So overall, I like Lamar Jackson, but it's not enough to get me to take that side. So I'm going with the Joe Burrow side. Jumping over to the second deal of the three, we've got a 12-team start 10 PPR half-point tight end premium. And this one's strictly players. So on the one side, and this is interesting because it actually has two of the injured people from this game, we got Mark Andrews and Joe Burrow. 4, Jahmyr Gibbs, Brock Purdy, and Trey McBride. Now, in my opinion, this seems like an incredibly savvy way to get Mark Andrews and Joe Burrow. You've got Jahmyr Gibbs. He's done incredibly well given his opportunity, and certainly while David Montgomery was out. Even once David Montgomery came back, Jahmyr Gibbs was still tremendously effective, and I think that's going to continue to be a 1-2 punch, a little bit of a thunder and lightning dynamic. I don't see why they would go away from that. I think that's something that's worked for them well, at least from an NFL, the real game standpoint. And I'm pretty sure Dan Campbell is much more concerned with the wins and losses in the NFL than he is our fantasy hopes and dreams. So I like this pairing Gibbs and really savvy. I'm surprised that this was the viewpoint of what people thought about Brock Purdy to make this deal go, because he came on strong. Again, I still am a Brock Purdy believer. I know he really rose tremendously in the beginning of the season. Kind of trickled off a bit, but he is still surrounded by yak monsters. And these are his weapons, of course, the scheme, everything about that offense gives Brock Purdy the best chance to shine. And the number of quarterbacks we've seen that are tremendously talented, that don't land in the right scheme, that don't land in the right position, that don't land there with the right weapons, just waste away and end up just becoming backup quarterbacks. What could have been? Brock Purdy, again, I know it's a tremendous story, Mr. Irrelevant, all that kind of stuff, but he's on a cheap contract. I have to believe he's going to stay in San Fran with how he's been playing. I don't know why they wouldn't, because pretty easy to build around a guy that's getting paid that little. And the most interesting piece, in my opinion, is Trey McBride. So when you look at this, Trey McBride, of course, has been a huge riser in Dynasty this year. A number of people have been talking about him through the offseason, thinking Ertz is done, he's cooked, and it's Trey McBride's time to step up. You, of course, had the interesting quarterback situation with Arizona where Dobbs did reasonably well. Kyler Murray finally is back and healthy. He's got one game under his belt. Looked good, in my opinion. And with Ertz actually starting out pretty well, I think that kind of quelled some of the Trey McBride believers a little bit, but most of the people who are diehards didn't give up on him. Now Zach Ertz, once he went down with his injury, Trey McBride stepped up, and I don't think he's given that job up at all. And now that he actually does have Kyler Murray under center, he and Trey McBride off to the races. This offense is getting a little more exciting there. Again, I'm sure they're still hoping to add more weapons and a little more playmakers there. But for now, Trey McBride has certainly risen to, I think, top 10 Dynasty tight ends for most people at this point. At worst, top 12, I would say. But all that to say, Mark Andrews and Joe Burrow, for those three. I don't see why you wouldn't do this. I would rather have the quarterback who has the tremendous, tremendous job security and obviously tremendous talent, of course. He's still on the younger side. It's not like he's 30. And again, even at this point, 30 is not crazy old for a quarterback. Mark Andrews, he is, I believe, 28, going to be 29 next season. So a little bit older. But again, it's Mark Andrews. I think we know his position in that Baltimore offense, even after they added those other weapons. And Nelson Aguilar, Odell Beckham Jr., drafted Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman's still there. Even after doing all of that, Mark Andrews has still been tremendously involved. And I have confidence in the fact that I'll take Joe Burrow, Mark Andrews, and the people who, of course, if you had Jahmyr Gibbs, you probably drafted him in the first round of your rookie drafts. Brock Purdy, if you stumbled into him. Trey McBride, probably second round of your rookie drafts, I would have guessed. I know he was the best tight end out of that class, but it was a pretty weak tight end class. So overall, if you would have thought back to what you had to pay to get those three players and you turned it into Mark Andrews and Joe Burrow, you'd be patting yourself on the back, and you definitely should. So the third and final deal, we've got a 10-team start 10 PPR half-point 10 in premium. Joe Burrow for, this is a nice little package here, Aaron Jones, Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, and a 2026 first. So another 2026 pick there. Still weird to see 2026 picks even being available at this point. Again, I think in a different way, like this last deal, when it was pairing Brock Purdy and Trey McBride with Jahmyr Gibbs to get those other two pieces, I think this is a pretty unique way to send Aaron Jones, an aging running back, Kirk Cousins, again, aging quarterback as well, I believe he's 35. Now he's coming off an Achilles injury. And Geno Smith, 32, 33 years old. The contract extension that he had gotten, it wasn't too long, and I had remembered that there was an out after the second year, I believe. So if they're not fully sold with him, and of course it was a reasonably affordable deal as far as quarterbacks go. Pair all of that with way down the road, who even knows if the league is still going in 2026 first. All that to get Joe Burrow. Why not? I mean, I don't know what format I wouldn't accept this in. I want Joe Burrow. I want Joe Burrow, and if I'm going to give up three players who average ages are over 30, 31, 32, I want to say, and to get Joe Burrow, when in 2024 you have presumably a healthy Joe Burrow at the helm, I don't think you're going to be missing any of Aaron Jones, Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, and by the time that first pick is even made, I mean, Joe Burrow will not even be 30 yet, if I'm remembering correctly, and he's still going to be playing some damn good football. So, again, these are the times. This is the day or the 2 days after something like this happens and news breaks. This is the kind of panic, and these are the kind of deals that you get to make. So what I can confidently say is if you can get Joe Burrow for really any of these prices, please, please, please go get him. Thank you for stopping by, talking some Joe Burrow Dynasty trades. Really appreciate it. Hey, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and like this video if you liked it, of course. And if you want to see more like this, if you want to see the Father Dynasty podcast episodes on, fatherhood and fantasy football, go ahead and subscribe. You'll see all of that and more. And appreciate you stopping in, and happy Dynasty.